It began inside the Crimson Empire War Council, the most feared war chamber in the galaxy. A vast circular hall built from dark red stone and glowing metal veins that pulsed with the rhythm of battle drums. It was a place where pride was law, arrogance was tradition, and mercy was a forgotten word. Generals lined the room in tall armor plates, their glowing eyes fixed on giant holographic maps of Terran space. Red markers blinked over Earth and its colonies like targets waiting to be claimed. Advisors shouted numbers, commanders shouted orders, and technicians scrambled across the floor to update the Imperial map that showed the soon-to-be easy victory. They laughed at the idea of humans ever resisting. Humans, they believed, were harmless, slow, emotional, too fragile to survive a real war. They had built their empire on that belief. But as the War Council prepared to launch the largest attack in decades, one alien in the center of the room refused to speak, refused to move, refused to breathe easily. He stood shaking, clutching something, a small Terran artifact, old and worn, given to him by a human long ago. His name was Eckler, once the Empire's ambassador to Earth, now a pale, trembling figure no one respected. His armor was lighter, simpler, without medals, without rank. He didn't belong in the council chamber anymore. But today, he forced his way inside. The generals mocked him the moment they saw him. "Look, the coward has returned," one shouted, pointing at him. "He still shakes from his time on that soft little planet. Humans made him weak." Another laughed loudly. "Of course he fears war." But they didn't see what he saw. They didn't know what he knew. They didn't understand the truth he carried in his trembling hands. When the Supreme General demanded silence, the room went still. His voice boomed across the chamber like thunder. "Ambassador Eckler," he growled mockingly, "you claim to bring an important message from the humans?" The entire room burst into laughter again, sharp, cruel, echoing off the stone walls. Eckler swallowed hard, stepping forward with shaking legs. His chest tightened. His hands trembled. His voice cracked. But he forced himself to speak. "You must not attack the humans." His words were soft, thin like a candle trying to survive a storm. The generals leaned closer, amused. "Why not?" The Supreme General sneered. "Will they cry?" More laughter erupted. Eckler's eyes filled with a fear so deep it quieted even the loudest commanders. He spoke again, but this time his voice carried weight. "Do not attack the humans," he whispered. "They will reduce your empire to ashes." The room fell quiet, not because they respected him, but because the trembling in his voice felt too real, too heavy, too raw to be only fear. Eckler continued, "You believe humans are weak because they choose peace. You believe humans are slow because they speak softly. You believe humans cannot fight because they avoid war." He raised his head slowly, and the council saw something in his eyes they had never seen before. True terror. But I lived among them. I saw the things they hide. I saw the power they don't show. One general snorted. "You exaggerate." Another slammed his fist. "They have no real weapons." A third hissed, "They are simple animals." But Eckler shook his head violently. "No," he whispered. "Humans are survivors. They banished their worst weapons not because they couldn't use them, but because they feared what would happen if they did." The generals paused. Some exchanged confused looks. Eckler stepped forward again, almost stumbling. He lifted the Terran artifact, an old metallic badge with a symbol of Terran defense. Their history is full of wars that ended worlds. They learned from those wars. They built things. His voice cracked. "Things your empire has no defense against." The Supreme General slammed his staff. "Enough. Humans are centuries behind our technology." Eckler's voice exploded with desperate truth. "That is what they want you to think." The hall fell into stunned silence once more. Eckler's breathing was fast, shallow. Sweat trickled down his forehead. His hands trembled harder. He spoke again, but now his words shook the room. "Do you know why Earth never shows its true strength?" He pointed at the holographic map. "Because every time humans revealed their power in history, someone tried to destroy them." His voice dropped. "So they learned to hide." A commander scoffed. Hide. Hide from who? Eckler stared at him with hollow eyes. From everyone. He explained how humans had mastered the art of appearing small, how they learned to smile while bleeding, how they learned to stand quiet while preparing storms, how they learned to survive by pretending to be weaker than they were. Humans do not start wars, Eckler whispered. But when they must fight, they do not stop. He swallowed hard. And they do not lose. The Supreme General stepped forward, towering over him. You claim to have seen human technology stronger than ours? Lies. We have scanned their fleets. They are primitive. Eckler's lips trembled. Then why, he whispered, did their scanners block ours every time they wanted privacy? The chamber fell silent again this time, heavier, sharper, but pride was stronger than caution. One general roared, "We are the Crimson Empire. We fear nothing." Eckler closed his eyes painfully. Then you will die. The room erupted with rage. Out. Remove him. Traitor. Coward. Guards rushed forward and grabbed him by the arms. He didn't resist. He dropped the Terran badge, and it clattered across the floor. As they dragged him away, he shouted one last warning, his voice cracking with desperation. You do not know what humans can do. The massive doors slammed shut behind him. Inside, the generals roared with pride. Begin the invasion. Prepare the fleet. Earth will fall in ours. But outside those doors, Eckler collapsed against a wall, tears streaming down his face. They do not understand. He whispered, they will wake the humans. He stared into the dark corridor, shaking uncontrollably. And when the humans wake, they do not go back to sleep. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Earth's silent orbital satellites detected the buildup of Crimson Empire forces. Warning lights glowed red. Old systems came online. Alarms whispered through hidden bunkers. And deep beneath the surface of Earth, something ancient, something powerful, something the galaxy was never supposed to see, opened its eyes. Eckler was right. The Empire had made the worst mistake in its history. They ignored the one warning that could have saved them. They provoked the one species that knew how to survive anything. And now, the storm they believed did not exist was coming for them. The Crimson Empire did not wait. Within hours of the War Council's arrogant decision, thousands of warships rose from their planetary docks, crimson engines blazing like angry suns. The fleet stretched across the void in a sea of red metal and pride. Every ship loaded with weapons designed to crush planets, tear through shields, and erase civilizations. Commanders barked orders, soldiers cheered. And the Emperor stood on his balcony, watching the armada launch with a smile of pure confidence. To him, humans were insects. Earth was a minor world. The attack would be simple. But as the fleet moved toward Terran space, a strange uneasiness spread, not spoken, not admitted, just a crawling sense that something about this mission felt wrong. The flagship, the Crimson Crown, led the armada. Inside its grand bridge, Commander Varkos stood tall, armor gleaming, eyes sharp with ambition. Screens around him showed the movement of the full fleet. We will strike Earth before sunrise, he declared proudly. Officers saluted, pretending not to notice how their captain's words felt oddly fragile in the vast silence of space. For the first time in years, the Empire marched toward a new enemy, having ignored every warning sign. They dismissed Eckler's trembling words. They ignored his fear. They believed his panic was weakness. But as the fleet neared Terran borders, some soldiers whispered his warning to each other in the dark corners of the ship. What if he was right? What if humans aren't as weak as we think? What if they have weapons we don't know about? But every time the doubt surfaced, the commanders crushed it with laughter. Humans are nothing. Even their ships are toys. Their defenses are outdated. They have no advanced fleets. The arrogance blinded them completely. And so, the fleet moved deeper and deeper, passing nebulae, star clusters, dead space zones. But the closer they got to Terran borders, the stranger the void felt. The stars seemed dimmer. The space felt heavier. The silence felt unnatural, as if watching them. And for the first time in his career, Commander Varkos felt Observed, monitored, judged. He shook it off, refusing to show weakness. He ordered the fleet to accelerate. But the emptiness only grew thicker, colder. Their scanners picked up nothing, not a single human patrol ship. Not a satellite, not a drone, not even basic Terran transmissions. Why is their border unguarded? An officer asked nervously. Maybe? Maybe they don't know we're coming? Or maybe they're hiding? Or maybe they're already evacuating, running from us. Varkos forced a cruel smile. Of course they are running. They fear us. But deep inside, a tiny seed of doubt pierced his confidence. Then the silence broke, not through sound, but through absence. Suddenly, their long-range scanners lost data. Entire screens went black. Communication lines flickered weakly. Ship logs malfunctioned, as if something enormous passed near them, something with a signature too large to display. Engineers scrambled, hitting controls, whispering curses. "Sir, systems are glitching. We're losing sensor data. Something is interfering with our scans." Varkos slammed his fist onto the console. Find the source. But there was no source. Only emptiness. Deep, ancient, unnatural emptiness. This was not normal space. This was space that had been touched by something. As they crossed into Terran territory, the stars dimmed again, swallowed by a shadow that none of their scanners could read. A strange static filled the background. Not noise, not interference, but a hum. A slow, rhythmic, hum-like. A sleeping beast breathing beneath the void. "Do you hear that?" A young officer whispered, fear twisting through his voice. "It's coming from somewhere ahead." Varkos frowned. "Explain, sir." "This hum, it's not random. It's structured, mechanical, like a machine waking up." The officers froze. Even Varkos felt his stomach tighten. But his pride was stronger. "Humans do not have machines that size," he snapped. "This is nothing, keep moving." The fleet obeyed. But the hum grew louder. The void grew darker. The tension grew heavier. They passed a region with no stars, just a patch of nothing. Too dark, too deep. One officer stared into it and whispered, "Sir, that darkness. It's moving." Varkos turned sharply. "What?" The officer swallowed. I don't know. I thought I saw something." Varkos glared. "This fleet does not fear shadows," he ordered full speed. But the shadow moved with them. The hum grew stronger. The space around them vibrated as if responding to their presence. And then every single ship's alarm began screaming at once. Lights exploded red. Sirens howled. Officers stumbled, grabbing railings. Warning symbols filled the screens. Energy surge detected, unknown signature approaching, unidentified object awakening. "Report." Varkos roared. A terrified voice answered, "Sir, an object is rising behind us from the dark region. Put it on screen." The main monitor flickered, glitched, then slowly revealed a massive shape emerging from the void like a leviathan rising from a black ocean. The officers gasped. Varkos's breath shattered. The thing was enormous. Too enormous. Vast metal plates. Glowing blue veins like lightning trapped under armor. A silhouette older than the Empire itself. A shape no alien in the room recognized, except one. The communications officer whispered, his voice breaking. "Sir, this is Terran. It's a Terran signature." The bridge froze. "Terran." Varkos whispered. "Humans built this?" But before anyone could answer, the shadowed colossus lit up just slightly. A single blue eye opened on its hull, glowing like the gaze of an ancient titan waking from centuries of sleep. The hum stopped. Space went silent. Every Crimson Empire ship's engine halted. Systems froze. And for the first time in his life, Commander Varkos felt something he never expected to feel, the weight of a human warning Ackler tried to save them from. That ancient Terran thing watched them, silently, calmly, patiently, as if deciding whether they were a threat or prey. Varkos stepped back, voice shaking. "What? What is that?" And for the first time in Crimson Empire history, not one officer had an answer. But deep in the Empire's capital, far away, Ackler suddenly stopped walking. His heart dropped. His eyes filled with tears. He whispered to himself, "They woke it." The thing rising behind the Crimson Empire fleet was not just a ship, it was a nightmare shaped in metal. A silent giant watching them with the cold patience of something that had seen centuries pass and survived them all. The moment its blue eye opened, every Imperial officer felt their body lock, as if the void itself pressed a hand against their throat. None of them had ever seen a Terran vessel this size. None of them believed humans could build something so ancient, so unnatural, so impossibly vast. Commander Varkos stared at the glowing blue eye, his mind spinning with disbelief and terror. How? How is this human?" he whispered, voice trembling so hard it barely escaped his lips. No one answered. They couldn't. Their scanners scrambled, showing numbers that made no sense, energy levels beyond recorded limits, structural readings that broke their systems, power signatures too old to match any known database. Engineers screamed as consoles shorted out. Pilots grabbed their chairs as gravity flickered strangely inside their ships. The massive shadow moved closer, but so slowly, so calmly, as if it did not even consider the Crimson Empire worth rushing for. One officer fell to his knees, shaking violently. "Sir, it's scanning us, but it's not. Using beams. It's reading us like we're open books." Outside, the giant's hull pulsed with soft blue light. It did nothing threatening. It did not fire. It did not speak. It simply observed. That silence was worse than any weapon. Varkos backed away from the screen. His heart pounded so loud he could barely hear the alarms. His instincts screamed to run, but his pride forced him to stand. "Send a warning broadcast," he ordered, though his voice cracked. "Identify ourselves. Let it know we are the Crimson Empire." The communications officer's hands shook as he pressed the broadcast button. "Unknown Terran vessel. This is Commander Varkos of the Crimson Empire. This is a secure and authorized fleet. Identify yourself immediately, or we will." The officer stopped. His voice choked. His eyes widened. Words collapsed in his throat. Because the moment he said "we will," the ship responded not with sound, not with a message, but with a single pulse of its giant blue eye. It wasn't bright. It wasn't violent. It wasn't even fast. It was a gentle flicker, like a blink. But that single blink shut down every weapon system in the entire Imperial Armada. Cannons powered off. Missiles froze mid-chamber. Shields collapsed in an instant. Engines dropped to zero. Lights dimmed. The fleet drifted in silence like dead fish floating on black water. No explosion. No attack. Just stillness. Varkos whispered. "It disabled us." With one blink, officers stared at their dead consoles, unable to even breathe. Some cried silently. Some whispered prayers for the first time in their lives. One soldier stuttered, "Sir, this is not a warship. This is something older. Something humans hid." The giant Terran vessel moved again closer, its hull wider than their entire formation. Its blue veins glowing like rivers flowing through a living creature. Varkos felt his legs weaken. The officers backed away like prey, cornered by a predator too big to fight. Suddenly, the bridge lights flickered again. A new signal appeared on their screen, simple, crude, almost human. 3 words. "Turn back now." The entire crew froze. The letters glowed white against the dark background. No threats. No insults. Just a warning. A cold, calm warning. Varkos swallowed hard. His throat burned with fear. It speaks Terran," he whispered. The communications officer trembled. "Sir, it's sending the message directly into our system. No encryption. It's overriding our controls." A low hum rose from the giant ship, vibrating the space around them. The Empire's ships shook like toys caught in the wake of something divine. Then a second message appeared. "This is your only warning." The officers stared in terror. One shakily whispered Ackler was right. Humans built monsters. Varkus's voice broke as he whispered, "If this is just one ship, what else do they have?" Before anyone could speak, the Terran ship's blue eye brightened slightly, not in anger, but in acknowledgement, like a guardian giving one last chance before turning into something far worse. The hum grew deeper. The hole grew brighter. And then the space ahead of them rippled. A small hole opened in the void, a distortion of space-time, like a wound tearing open. And a second giant shadow shifted behind it. Then a third. Varkos dropped into his command seat, shaking. His voice was barely a whisper. "There are more." Officers fell silent. Terror swallowed their pride. "Are we surrounded? Is this a trap? How many do they have?" But the Terran ship did something unexpected. It turned away. The giant pivoted slowly, peacefully, drifting back into the darkness, with the calm dignity of something that did not fear the Empire, did not care about their numbers, did not need to prove anything. As it moved, the space around it shimmered, and its blue veins dimmed like a beast returning to sleep. But before disappearing completely, it sent one final message. Short, simple, terrifying. "Do not wake the others." And then it vanished. No warp jump. No engines. It simply faded into the void, like a ghost returning to its grave. Varkos collapsed, gripping the edges of his chair as his breath shook uncontrollably. The Empire's entire fleet drifted powerless, silent, humbled. Officers stared blankly, unable to accept what they'd just witnessed. Varkos whispered the words Eckler had tried to warn them with. "We should never have come here." Because now they understood. This was not a Terran border. This was a graveyard of sleeping giants. And the Crimson Empire had just knocked on their tomb. The Crimson Empire fleet drifted in total silence. Engines dead, weapons offline. Every ship shaking with the leftover shock of witnessing the Terran Colossus vanish like a ghost slipping beneath a black ocean. But the fear did not leave with the giant ship. If anything, it grew heavier, tightening around their throats, squeezing their pride into dust. Commander Varkos stood frozen on the bridge, staring at the empty void where the hulking Terran monster had disappeared. His officers waited, afraid to breathe, afraid to speak, afraid to even blink, because every shadow in space now looked like the shape of that blue-eyed titan. Then, without warning, every screen on the flagship flickered violently. Static rippled across the displays. Symbols glitched. Lights dimmed. Officers gasped and stumbled back as the bridge temperature dropped like cold fingers brushing their necks. One officer whispered, "Sir, something is accessing our systems again." Varkos jolted. But the ship left, his voice died. Because the giant Terran ship wasn't back. Something else was. A soft tremor rolled through the fleet, gentle, slow, almost like a breath moving across space. Officers turned pale. What was that? Another ship? Is it the same one? But no shape appeared. No light, no silhouette, just that strange, slow tremor, steady, rhythmic, like a heart beating in the dark. Varkos swallowed hard. "Scan the area, sir." "The scanners aren't responding." "Then fix them." "I can't. They're being overridden by what?" A low beep answered the question. A new message appeared on every screen, 3 words, glowing in bright Terran white. "You didn't listen?" The officers froze. Their hearts stopped. Varkos's knees nearly buckled. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no. Not again." But the message didn't disappear. It multiplied. It appeared on every wall, every console, every emergency display, every ship across the entire fleet. Thousands of vessels. Millions of terrified soldiers. All staring at the same warning, written in simple human language. "Why is it saying that?" One officer whimpered. "We didn't do anything." But Varkos knew. His stomach twisted violently. "Because," he whispered shakily, "we crossed deeper into Terran space." As if responding, the message changed. "Turn back." A pulse-soft light rolled across the fleet. Not violent. Not damaging. But it rattled their bones. It made the ships tremble. And then another pulse. Stronger officers grabbed rails, stumbling. Panels sparked. Lights flickered. The hum from the void deepened. Something enormous, something unseen, was rising again. Varco stumbled to the main window, staring into the endless black ocean of stars. Where is it coming from? He whispered. But there was nothing to see. No shape. No glow. No ship. Only darkness. And yet, the darkness felt alive. Another tremor shook the fleet. Stronger. Deep enough to make metal groan. "Sir," an officer cried. "We're detecting mass displacement." "From where?" "Everywhere." The bridge went silent with fear. Suddenly, the void bent. A ripple cut across space like a wave slicing through water. The stars stretched, distorted, twisted. Varkus's breath hitched. No, that's impossible. The void opened wide, deep, silent. But nothing came out. Instead, something whispered through their systems. A low-level Terran transmission. Not a threat. Not a scream, but a voice calm, steady, ancient. A voice that sounded like it came from the first Terran ship that ever left Earth. "Do not wake the sleepers." The officers looked at each other in horror. Sleepers. You mean there are more ships like the first one? No. We can't fight that. Another message flickered into existence. "This is your final warning." Varkos felt his heartbeat pounding in his ears. Final. The bridge lights dimmed again. Something massive shifted inside the ripple of warped space, too big to define, too quiet to locate, too ancient to analyze. One officer collapsed to the floor. Another whispered, "Commander, it's watching us. Whatever it is, it's watching us." The ripple thinned slowly, almost sadly, like a curtain closing. A final message appeared. "Leave now." This one wasn't calm, this one wasn't gentle. This one felt like the voice of a sleeping god being disturbed. One time too many. Varkos didn't hesitate anymore. His pride shattered completely. His voice cracked, full of panic and trembling breath. "Order the full retreat." Officers scrambled, some crying, others shaking so hard their hands barely touched the controls. The fleet engine struggled, coughed, flickered, then roared back to life. The whole Crimson Empire armada turned away, fleeing the darkness they had foolishly entered. But as they escaped, something behind them pulsed one last soft hum, not angry, but disappointed. The void faded back to normal. The stars returned. The signal cut off. And only one final, quiet Terran message stayed on their screens as they fled like terrified children, "Do not return." Varkos stared at those words, sweat running down his face. He finally understood. Ackler hadn't been warning them about a human weapon. He had been warning them about a human graveyard, a place where ancient Terran titans slept. And the Crimson Empire had just knocked on their doors across the galaxy. While the Crimson Empire fleet fled in panic, Ackler, the former ambassador to Earth, knelt, alone in the corridor outside the Imperial Council chamber, his hands shaking uncontrollably. He had felt the moment the first Terran sleeper stirred. The moment the second warning pulsed through space. The moment the Empire crossed the final line. His heart hammered like it wanted to escape his chest, and sweat ran down his face as if he were standing too close to fire. He knew something the Empire refused to believe. The humans were not waking their weapons. The weapons were waking themselves. He staggered into the throne hall, pushing through guards who tried to stop him. The Emperor rose in anger, but the look on Ackler's face silenced him. "Speak," the Emperor commanded, trying to hide the tremor in his voice. Ackler fell to his knees. "It has begun," he whispered, almost choking on the words. "You sent our fleet into the Terran graveyard?" The entire hall froze. Advisors whispered urgently. Generals frowned. The Emperor narrowed his eyes. "Graveyard." Ackler lifted his head, tears trembling at the edge of his lashes. "Those shadows in Terran space are not empty sectors. They are not abandoned systems. They are not dead zones. They are where the humans hid their sleepers." The hall erupted in confusion. Sleepers. Weapons. Ships. What are these sleepers? Ackler forced himself to breathe, but fear strangled his voice. The humans built ships thousands of years ago. Ships too powerful to control, too dangerous for the galaxy, too devastating to unleash. They feared their own creation, clutched his chest, so they buried them. The Emperor laughed too loudly, too nervously. You expect us to believe humans made something dangerous enough to fear? Ackler's voice hardened suddenly. Yes. The hall fell silent. Ackler stepped forward. I saw a fragment of their old archives. I saw the records of the wars they fought before the Empire even existed. I saw weapons that could destroy star clusters. I saw machines that could rewrite gravity. I saw ships that could swallow fleets. The general scoffed, but Ackler continued, voice heavy with trauma. Humans didn't hide these ships because they were weak. They hid them because they were strong. Meanwhile, deep in space, the Crimson Empire fleet finally stabilized its engines. Soldiers tried to breathe normally again. Officers wiped tears off their cheeks, but none dared speak. Not after what they saw. Not after reading the final Terran warning glowing on their screens, "Do not return." On the flagship, Commander Varkos slumped into his chair, head in his hands, shaking violently. He had seen war. He had seen death. But he had never seen fear like this, fear generated not by attack, but by silence, by calmness, by a presence that watched without blinking. One officer approached him slowly. Sir, if we had kept going, do you think it would have destroyed us? Varkos looked up, eyes empty. It didn't need to fire, he whispered. It only had to wake. Back in the throne hall, Ackler stood shakily before the Emperor. Your fleet survived only because the first sleeper chose mercy. The Emperor felt his hands go cold. Why? Why would it show mercy? Ackler closed his eyes. Because humans do not attack first. Even their monsters do not attack first. Then what do they want? An advisor asked. Ackler opened his eyes, filled with dread. Peace. But if peace is refused, the humans will not fight you. His voice dropped to a trembling whisper. Their sleepers will. The hall erupted into chaos, but Ackler yelled louder. You do not understand. Humans built machines that could end our empire in minutes. His voice softened, filled with sorrow. And those machines still sleep. He took a breath, slow, painful, final. But every step we take into Terran space wakes another. The Emperor's voice cracked. How many are there? Ackler looked up at him with eyes filled with hopeless fear. More than we can imagine. Silence gripped the hall. Outside the windows, the stars themselves looked dimmer. The Emperor lowered his voice. What? What happens if they all wake up? Ackler's face went pale. Then the galaxy ends. A chilling wind seemed to pass through the hall as if the universe itself heard those words. Ackler's knees weakened. His hands trembled. We must beg forgiveness, he whispered. We must retreat. We must stay away from their borders. We must pray the sleepers go back to rest. He bowed his head. Because if all awaken, nothing will stop them. Not your fleets. Not your weapons. Not your empire. In the void, the Crimson Fleet drifted in terror. In the palace, the Emperor shook for the first time in his life. And in the darkness beyond Earth, deep inside the silent graveyard of forgotten giants, another blue eye flickered. The second sleeper was waking across the far edges of Terran space. Deep inside the black void where stars refused to shine, something ancient stirred, slow, heavy, powerful, like a mountain shifting after thousands of years of silence. The Crimson Empire fleet, still fleeing in terror, felt the vibration before any scanners detected it. It wasn't sound. It wasn't light. It wasn't movement. It was a feeling, a pressure in the chest, a weight in the bones, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Commander Varkos stood on the bridge, eyes wide, heart hammering, because he recognized that pulse, the same pulse they felt before the first sleeper woke. Only this time, it was stronger, much stronger. Officers screamed as warning alarms burst to life. Cernu energy spike. It's huge, we've never seen numbers like this. It's coming from behind us. Varkos turned slowly, dread crawling up his spine like ice. No, he whispered, no, not another. but the void behind the retreating fleet twisted, bent, rippled like fabric being pulled apart by an invisible hand. A single blue spark flickered inside the darkness. It grew and grew and grew, until the spark became an enormous eye, bigger, brighter, deeper than the first sleeper's opening. Slowly, painfully, like something waking from a dream it should never have been disturbed from. One officer collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably. Another whispered, "What have we done?" The second sleeper emerged from the void, massive, terrifying, ancient, bigger than the first. Its blue veins glowed with violent intensity, lighting up the silent graveyard like lightning trapped beneath metal skin. Unlike the first sleeper, which moved calmly, gently, patiently, this one looked angry. Its energy signature burned hot enough to distort the space around it. Its presence felt like a storm tearing across a dead world. The entire Crimson Fleet shook violently. Systems flickered. Lights failed. Gravity faltered. Varkos gripped his chair, barely staying on his feet. "Why is it waking?" he screamed. The communications officer cried out, "Sir, wasn't directed at us. It's waking because the first sleeper woke." The bridge froze. That single truth hit Varkos. It's harder than any attack. The sleepers weren't guarding humans. The sleepers were guarding each other, and waking one meant waking them all. In the Imperial Palace, alarms blared across the throne hall as the Emperor stared at the trembling floor beneath his feet. "What is happening now?" he roared. Advisors ran in panic. Generals screamed orders. Ackler stood in the center of the confusion, horror twisting his face. "The second sleeper has awoken," he said, voice breaking. "The first one tried to warn you. The messages were not threats. They were pleas, please." The Emperor shouted, "From humans?" Ackler shook his head slowly. "From the machines." The throne hall fell silent. Ackler raised his trembling arms. "Humans built these sleepers with their own fear. They built them to survive wars the galaxy never knew. They built them to protect themselves when humanity nearly went extinct." His voice deepened. Trembling with the memory of what he saw on Earth, the sleepers were not designed to wake unless the threat was so great. Humanity could not handle it alone. He stepped closer to the Emperor. "Do you understand now? The sleepers are not awakening because they want to destroy us." His voice dropped to a shaking whisper. "They are waking because they think humanity is in danger." The Emperor stumbled backward, shaking uncontrollably. "Danger? From who?" Ackler stared at him with hollow eyes. "From us." Back in space, the second sleeper released a blast of blue energy so strong the Crimson Fleet's alarms exploded in sparks. But strangely, it didn't attack. It didn't fire. It didn't even move closer. It only scanned them, the same cold, heavy, crushing scan the first sleeper used, yet this time deeper, harsher, stronger. The fleet screamed under the pressure as systems died again. Varkos clung to the railing as cracks spread across his armor from the sheer weight of the signal. "We need to send a message. Please, anything. We've lost control." An officer screamed. "Communications are jammed. Its aura is too strong." "Then retreat," Varkos shouted. "Faster." But the engines refused. The ships drifted helplessly, like dust on a cosmic ocean. Then the second sleeper spoke. Not through speakers. Not through comm channels, but directly into their minds. A deep, ancient voice vibrated inside every skull, calm but terrifying. Soft but heavy enough to bend sanity. "You were warned." Officers screamed, holding their heads. Pilots fainted. Soldiers begged the void for mercy. Varkos felt like his brain was boiling. The voice spoke again. "Turn back." Another pulse slammed through the fleet, disabling every engine completely. Varkos gasped as he felt something break inside him, a bone-deep understanding that this was not a war. This was judgment. Then the sleeper sent a message across the fleet's simple Terran script. "Cold and final, the next to wake will not show mercy." Varkos stared at the message, sweat dripping down his face. "Unnext," he whispered. "There's a third." The sleeper's huge blue veins flared brighter, illuminating half the fleet with deadly beauty. A final message flashed. Leave, or they all rise. The void shook. The stars trembled. The fleet finally regained engine power. Without waiting for orders, they fled at maximum speed, abandoning pride, abandoning honor, abandoning everything except survival. In the palace, Ackler whispered the truth the Empire never wanted to hear. If the third sleeper awakens, there will be no Empire left to retreat to. The Crimson Empire fleet fled through space like wounded animals, engines burning at maximum power, shields failing. Officers screaming as the second sleeper's psychic warning echoed through their minds long after its voice had faded. Every soldier felt as if cold fingers still gripped the back of their skulls. The great flagship, the Crimson Crown, shook violently from the stress of its desperate escape. But even as they ran, the void behind them pulsed against low, deep, ancient like something enormous, shifting in its sleep. Commander Varkos stared at the dark space in horror, terrified that a third blue eye might open at any second. "Faster!" he screamed, voice cracking. "Get us away before the third awakens." Officers tried to comply, hands trembling so badly they struggled to tap controls. Tears streamed down faces. Every heartbeat felt like a countdown. They all knew one truth. Now the Empire had walked into a nightmare far older than itself. The first sleeper had shown mercy. The second sleeper had shown warning. But the third, everyone felt it. The third would show nothing but destruction. Suddenly, communications crackled violently. A shrill tone cut through the bridge. Ser Weir, receiving a transmission from the Imperial Palace. Varkos nearly collapsed with relief. "Put it through." The Emperor appeared, face pale, sweaty, terrified, his crown removed. His robes disheveled like a man who had aged 20 years in an hour. "Commander Varkos," he whispered, voice trembling. "How many sleepers are awake?" Varkos swallowed. "2, my Emperor." The Emperor closed his eyes, shaking uncontrollably. "Then there is still time." "Time for what?" Varkos asked, even though he dreaded the answer. The Emperor turned his head to Ackler, who stood beside him, exhausted and broken but alive. "Time to beg." The bridge fell silent. Varkos stared. "Beg humans?" The Emperor nodded shakily. "Yes. Because if the third sleeper wakes, we are finished." Ackler stepped forward, face filled with grief. "Commander Varkos," he said quietly, "you must stop running." The bridge erupted with disbelief. "Stop. We can't. Something is chasing us. We'll die if we stop." Ackler raised his voice, and for the first time in his life, the hall listened. "The sleepers do not chase," he said. "They react." Varkos blinked. "React to what?" Ackler looked directly at him. "Fear." The bridge froze. Ackler's voice softened, shaking with the truth only he knew. When the Empire entered Terran space, the sleepers woke because they sensed danger. When the fleet attacked, they woke faster. When you ran, they sensed panic. He stepped closer to the camera, gripping the console. The sleepers are not weapons. They are guardians. They were built to protect humanity from extinction, and they will not stop waking until they believe the threat is gone. Varkos's heart dropped. "So the more we run, the more they think humanity is in danger," Ackler finished. The Emperor trembled. "We must stop the fleet. We must show the sleepers we surrender." Varkos felt his legs weaken. "If we stop, and the third sleeper wakes, we die." Ackler's voice was raw. "If you continue, and the third sleeper wakes, the galaxy dies." A silence swallowed the bridge. Varkos closed his eyes, shaking harder than ever before. All his life, he had believed power came from strength, that victory came from fear, that empire survived by conquering. But now, staring into the endless black void, with ancient monsters sleeping inside it, he realized the terrible truth. Strength meant nothing to the sleepers. Fear meant everything. Varkos opened his eyes. "Order the fleet to stop." Officers stared at him in disbelief. "Sir, stop," Varkos repeated softly. "We surrender." The words nearly broke him, but he said them anyway. Full fleet stop. No weapons. No retreat. No aggression. Slowly, painfully, the Crimson Empire fleet powered down. Engines dimmed. Shields lowered. Every ship drifted silently in the void. The humming behind them faded slowly. The second sleeper's glow softened. No third eye opened. The void went still again. Minutes passed. Long, suffocating minutes. Then a whisper. A single Terran message slid onto their screens. "Good." The fleet gasped. Varkos clutched his chest, tears falling down his face. They accepted our surrender. The Emperor sank to his knees in relief. Ackler bowed his head, whispering a prayer he had learned from humans. But then new text appeared on the screens. "Stay away." Another line. "Do not enter Terran space again." A final line. "Let us sleep." The second sleeper dimmed. Slowly, peacefully. Its blue veins fading like a giant returning to rest. The void softened. The stars returned. The galaxy exhaled. The Crimson Empire had survived barely. As the fleet slowly turned around, drifting away like humbled children leaving a forbidden place, Varkos whispered the truth that would be etched into history. We did not escape. We were forgiven. And on Earth, far beneath the planet's crust, in a chamber older than the Empire itself, a human voice spoke into the silent dark. "Stand down, sleepers. The danger is gone." The giant machines returned to stillness. The blue eyes flickered out. The Terran graveyard fell silent once more. Humanity did not roar. Humanity did not chase. Humanity simply went back to sleep. And the Crimson Empire learned the lesson it would never forget. Humans were never the weak ones. They were the ones holding back.